Jack, it's my pleasure to be here this morning with you to do an interview. Folks, this is Jack Cook from right here in Mason, Michigan. We will be conducting Jack's presidential memorabilia auction later this year. But we just wanted to sit down, Jack, and just have a chat and find out more about your collection. This has been a lifelong passion of yours. So
About 60 years.
how did you get into this? How did this start?
Well, it started as like all bad things with an auctioneer who did it. I went to an auction back in the mid-60s and I bought a crate of junk for 50 cents off the jewelry
High
wagon.
quality merchandise, yes.
It was off the jewelry wagon. Yeah, I bid 50 cents. He said, "You got it." That was it. He was trying to get home for supper, I think. But inside of that crate was a little box, this wooden box right here, and it said pins on it. So I opened it up, and there was 3 "I Like Ike" buttons in there. And I thought those were pretty neat, and I kind of liked Ike. And so I began to pick up buttons here and there and around, and people gave me buttons when they saw I was collecting buttons, and then I started picking up other stuff, and it kind of grew and expanded, and today I think I have about 8,000 items of presidential memorabilia here.
So these were the original 3 pieces.
That's where it started, with those 3 "I Like Ike" buttons. I think I have just over 2,000 campaign buttons now of presidents. They used to, just give them away, but now you have to buy those buttons. They don't give them to you anymore. They're a little more expensive than they used to be, I guess. But that's where it started.
Perfect.
And it led me a long ways from Dansville, Michigan. That's where I'm from, is Dansville, Michigan. I got to make sure I get that in there. I'm a Dansvillian. It led me to the Oval Office and to a lot of places in between. But I was a guest at the Oval Office. I've made it to national conventions. I've been to all the presidential libraries. I've met 5 U.S. presidents. I've had some good conversations with them. It's been a fun hobby. My wife and I have traveled a lot and seen a lot and done a lot. We've been in places we never thought we'd be. I've been privileged to have had the Secret Service agents on both arms telling me that I can't be where I am and so on.
But there you were.
Yeah. Well, I feel like if you dress like them, talk like them, act like them, and think you belong, a lot of times they think you belong and they just leave you alone. I've rubbed shoulders with presidents and their people, and they've just left me right alone and just thought I belonged there.
So tell me about the story of visiting the Oval Office and the admonition your wife gave you when you were in the Oval Office.
Well, I got to the Oval Office. I speak a lot to school children, and I spoke to this group of school kids, and one of the teachers later came up and said, "Have you ever been in the Oval Office?" And I said, "Well, no, I haven't." She said, "Well, my brother works there. I'm going to call him, and maybe you can get in there." Well, he called me, told me to come to Washington and to come to the White House at 6 o'clock at night, and not to go to the visitor entrance, but to go on down to the next entrance. So I did, and we got down there, and the security people, and I think to this day that it was a setup, but to this day, I mean, that day it was pretty nervous, because they said to Mrs. Cook, you're okay, we've got you all, but Mr. Cook, we can't get your security clearance. And oh boy. And they were 20 minutes making me stand out there while they rummaged around, and I still think it was a setup. But anyway, we walked in, and we were walking up towards the double doors you've seen at the White House, and we got about 15 feet from the door, and I stopped and had Darlene make sure my pants were zipped up and I didn't have any gravy on my tie and stuff, and they were probably all listening, who knows. And we got right up there, and I reached for the door, and both doors opened, and they said, "Welcome to the White House, Mr. and Mrs. Cook." And I'll tell you, that was pretty exciting. And we got in there, and they said, "Mr. Swanson will be with you shortly." And he was the liaison between Ronald Reagan and the Senate. Anytime a senator was in the president's presence, he had to stand there and make people think that he knew all about this senator and his family and so on. That was his job. And he didn't have any private life. It was his job 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But anyway, He said to me, he said, now you can go anywhere you want in the White House. Just wander around, go anywhere you want. And my wife very quickly said, don't you pick up anything. Because it's kind of my hobby of kind of getting things, you know, for my collection.
Just a few.
And you know, there were Secret Service agents everywhere. But they were like potted plants. You know, their eyes moved, but that's the only thing that moved. And they watched you like a hawk. And we wandered around the White House there for a long time and had a good time. And then he said, my wife's got dinner ready, so he took us out to the parking lot to his private space and took us to his house for dinner. He had had lunch with the president and been with the president all day. But you know, it really was in perspective, because the first words out of his wife's mouth when he walked in the door was, honey, would you change the baby? And I thought, it doesn't matter what you do during the day. When you get home, it's home. But that was an exciting adventure.
And I think that's one thing that people forget, is that presidents really are just people.
Well, you know, the 5 presidents I've met have been extremely easy to visit with. Probably the president that I spoke the longest with and really enjoyed listening with him was Bill Clinton. And Bill Clinton, who was a Rhodes Scholar, and when he was 12, he met John Kennedy, and he wanted to be president. And when I told him about my hobby, I couldn't get away from the guy. I mean, he talked and talked and talked, and his aide kept telling him, you know, and he just kind of brushed him aside, and I thought, well, I must stay here as long as I can. And I think we visited for between 20 minutes to half an hour, and just had a great time.
Nice.
Yeah.
Of everywhere that you've visited other than the White House, what is your favorite presidential location? I know you've been to all of the presidential libraries.
Yeah, and I've been to I went to the Republican National Convention, and that was a hoot. But my favorite library is Harry Truman's library. And maybe it's because Harry Truman had this library built about 6 blocks from his house. And he used to walk down and stand in the lobby and greet people when they came in.
Okay.
But you got to remember, it was a different era. And Truman had no Secret Service protection. In fact, his autobiography is entitled Mr. Citizen. And he used to drive his own car down there and go to the coffee shop and go pick up the mail and go over and stand in the lobby and greet people. And I talked to one of the gals that worked at the library, and she had been there since Truman was alive. And I said to her, did you ever get an autograph from the president? She said, from Harry? Like, he wasn't, who'd want his autograph? You know, it was really interesting. And she said the only problem we had with Harry is if somebody was looking at one of the cases and they really liked something in there, he'd say, well, you can have that if you want. We got lots of stuff. And he was always giving away things. And I have studied Harry Truman and Richard Nixon more than any other presidents. I think both of them were fascinating men. And Harry Truman's library was a real treat. I've been there, I think, 4 different times. Okay. And I've read it in Independence, Missouri. If you ever get a chance, it's a good library to go to.
Excellent. So I know you have a lot of respect for the office of the president, and your collection spans both sides of the aisles. It's more about the office than necessarily the person. What is your outlook on the politics? I know your collection really knows no sides. It's not right, it's not left. You've collected from everyone, from everywhere.
To try to help me out with that, I joined both parties. So I'm a card-carrying Democrat and a card-carrying Republican now. They may catch up to me once in a while, but one day. But it's got me in a lot of places, you know. Personally, I think everybody that has really run for the office believed in their own mind and heart that they could do good things for the country. I don't think we've had bad presidents. I think we've had presidents that accomplished more than others. But, you know, presidents that, and you know this from your own business, you have to be able to delegate. And part of the problem that some of our presidents had is that they had to make all the decisions, and they couldn't delegate. And some of the presidents that we feel have been the most successful are people that could hire good people around them, bring good people into it, Because you think of the immensity, enormity of a job of President of the United States, leader of the free world. That's bigger than a man.
Absolutely.
Any man. So you got to have people around you. And I think the presidents that maybe we think accomplished more were presidents that just had the good people around them.
You have to surround yourself with.
But I don't think anybody has taken the office, regardless of what party they're associated with the idea that they're going to do something bad for the country. Well, we have one president, and when we get a president elected, he's my president, and he's going to be my president until the next one's elected.
Absolutely.
I don't believe in impeachment, by the way.
Right.
I think a president has been elected to office, and when he's, unless he did something, but just from politics to impeach the president, I think it hurts the country, and I'm not in favor of that at all. I've been to 2 impeachment trials.
That was my next question.
I sat in the Senate gallery and watched the Clinton impeachment trial, and I sat in the Senate gallery and watched the Trump impeachment trial. And when Andrew Johnson was impeached, I did not sit in the trial, regardless of what people say. That was in 1867, and I wasn't around then.
Not quite.
No, I didn't make that one, but I got a ticket. I got a ticket.
I've seen it.